I used to love the solitude of the wilderness, the silence, the isolation. It's what I craved. But one day, deep in the middle of nowhere, that silence was shattered, and I learned that you are never, ever truly alone. While it's hard to get a solid number, some FBI profilers and forensic psychologists estimate there could be anywhere from 25 to 50 serial killers active in the US at any given time. This is the story of how I came face to face with one of them and had to use everything I had to survive. It was supposed to be a 10-day solo trek through a remote patch of Alaskan wilderness. It was a place I'd spent months researching, and I wasn't going in blind. I've spent years sharpening my survival skills, learning how to read a map, the sky, how to build a shelter, how to rely on myself. I packed carefully: a 4-season tent, a sub-zero sleeping bag, multiple water purification systems, a serious first aid kit, and enough dehydrated food for 20 days, just in case. My goal was simple: just to unplug from all the noise and get back to something real, to test my own limits against the raw, beautiful indifference of nature. And the first few days were perfect. The air was so clean you could almost feel it in your lungs. The only sounds were the wind in the old-growth pines, the distant call of a loon across a glacial lake, and the crunch of my own boots on the trail. I felt this incredible sense of peace, like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The isolation wasn't scary, it was freeing. My days were for hiking, and my evenings were for reading by headlamp, totally secure because I was prepared. I had a plan, the right gear, and I'd told 2 people my exact route and when to expect me back. I did everything right. At least that's what I thought. The one thing I never really prepared for wasn't a bear or a blizzard. It was a man. Something started to feel off on the evening of my 4th day. I was setting up camp near a rushing creek, the sound of the water like a constant, soothing white noise. As I was pounding the last tent stake into the soft ground, I saw them. Footprints. They were down by the water's edge, half washed away. But they were there, and they weren't mine. My boots have a deep, aggressive tread for tough terrain. These prints were smoother, like from a work boot, and definitely bigger than my own. My logical brain kicked in, trying to talk me down. It's a remote area, sure, but not undiscovered. Maybe another hiker passed through earlier, took a different fork in the trail. It was possible. But as the sun started to sink behind the mountains, casting these long, twisted shadows everywhere, I just couldn't shake this deep, primal feeling of being watched. The forest, which felt like a sanctuary just a few hours ago, now felt like it was holding its breath. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves shot straight through my nervous system. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that the isolation was making me jumpy. I barely slept that night. I was just lying there in my sleeping bag, straining to hear anything that didn't belong in the normal symphony of the wilderness. I must have dozed off, because a sound snapped me awake. It was faint, almost swallowed by the sound of the creek, but it was unmistakable. The sharp crack of a heavy branch breaking under someone's weight. It was close, way too close. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I lay completely still, every muscle coiled, just waiting. The minutes dragged on for what felt like forever. Then, nothing. Exhaustion finally won, and I fell into a light, troubled sleep, my hand wrapped around the handle of my survival knife. The next morning, I packed up camp with a frantic energy, constantly scanning the dense trees around me. I tried to tell myself it was just an animal, a moose, maybe a bear. But that feeling of being watched was like a physical weight on my shoulders. As I got back on the main trail, I saw him for the first time. He was way down the path, just a silhouette in the morning mist. A man standing stock still, looking right at me. The second he saw me spot him, he turned and just melted back into the woods. It was too fast, too deliberate. Cold, sharp panic started to rise in my throat. I was being stalked. The second I accepted that I was being hunted, something in my head just flipped. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my gut, but now it was drowned out by a surge of adrenaline and a weird kind of clarity. My peaceful hike was over. This was about survival now. Every single choice, every step I took could be the one that decided if I lived or died. I immediately veered off the marked trail, crashing into the dense, pathless undergrowth. The trail was a trap, a predictable line that made me an easy target. My only goal now was to be unpredictable, to make myself a ghost. My mind was racing, flashing through every survival book I'd ever read, every documentary I'd ever seen. I thought about the story of Cindy Paulson, the only known victim to escape the serial killer Robert Hansen in these very woods. She survived by being tough and using her wits, and that's what I had to do. I pushed through thorny bushes that tore at my clothes and skin, waded through ice-cold streams to wash away my scent and tracks, and used the sun and the mountains to guide me, constantly changing my direction. My navigation skills weren't a hobby anymore. They were my lifeline. As dusk fell on the 5th day, I knew I couldn't risk a fire. The smoke would be a death sentence. I needed a hiding spot, not a campsite. I found a thick grove of spruce trees, their lowest branches, creating a natural, dark cave. I crawled in, dragged my pack in behind me, and burrowed into a small, hidden nest. It was cramped, it was cold, but it was defensible. I choked down a cold protein bar, sipped some filtered water, and just listened. The silence of the woods wasn't peaceful anymore. It was menacing. That was the longest night of my life. I didn't sleep for a second. Sometime after midnight, I heard it again, the slow, heavy crunch of footsteps. He was being methodical, sweeping the area. I could hear him moving back and forth just past my hiding spot. I had to force myself to control my breathing, making it slow and silent through my nose. He got so close I thought I could smell stale tobacco. He stopped, and I knew with a certainty that turned my blood to ice that he was standing right outside the spruce branches. I gripped my knife until my knuckles were white. I was ready to fight. It's what the experts say. Predators look for easy prey, not a fight. I wouldn't be easy. After an eternity, the footsteps finally moved on, fading back into the night. He hadn't found me, but I knew he wasn't giving up. The next morning, I knew I couldn't just keep hiding. My only chance was to run. I had to create distance, get somewhere I could signal for help. I left my tent and most of my gear, taking only the bare essentials, water and a filter, the last of my food, my knife, a map, compass, and a signal mirror. Every ounce was critical. My plan was to follow a big river I'd seen on the map. Rivers often lead to people, or at least to open country where I might be seen. For 2 days, I moved as fast as my body would let me. The terrain was hell, a brutal mix of dense forest, slick rock faces, and boggy swamps. I fell, I got cut, I was exhausted and starving, but I didn't stop. The fear of the man behind me was a much better motivator than pain. I never looked back, but I could feel him. It was like a sixth sense, this constant pressure telling me the hunt was still on. The confrontation came on the afternoon of the 7th day. I was scrambling down a steep, rocky slope toward the river when my foot slipped. I tumbled hard, my ankle twisting underneath me with a sickening crunch. I landed in a heap at the bottom, a sharp, white-hot pain shooting up my leg. I tried to stand. No chance. My ankle wouldn't hold an ounce of weight. And then I heard a noise from the top of the slope. He was there, a silhouette against the sky, just like the first time. But he wasn't far away anymore. He was close. And he started walking down toward me, moving with this horrifying confidence. There was nowhere to run. For a split second, my mind went completely blank with terror. Then, a strange calm washed over me. This was it. Fight or die. He reached the bottom and stopped about 20 feet away. He was older than I'd thought. His face was leathery and creased, but his eyes were just empty, cold. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. It was a thin, cruel smile that made my skin crawl. In one hand, he was holding a length of rope. I pushed myself up against a rock, my leg throbbing. I held my knife out, the blade catching the flat, gray light. "Stay back!" I yelled, my voice a low, guttural growl I didn't recognize. "Don't you come any closer." Predators can sometimes be intimidated by loud, aggressive noises. He took another step. I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was pure, unfiltered rage. I screamed at the top of my lungs, a single horrifying shriek that bounced off the rocks and echoed through the valley. I poured every bit of my terror, my exhaustion, and my will to live into that sound. At the same time, I started grabbing loose rocks with my free hand and just chucking them at him. Most of them missed, but one smacked him on the shoulder. He flinched, more surprised than hurt. The smile was gone, replaced by a look of annoyance. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He expected a terrified, easy victim. My sudden, violent resistance had broken his script. He hesitated, looking back up the slope, then at me. He gave me one last look of pure hatred, then turned and scrambled back up the way he came, disappearing over the ridge. I didn't stick around to see if he was really gone. I half crawled, half dragged myself to the river, and threw myself into the freezing water. The current was powerful, and it swept me downstream, away from that place. I grabbed onto a floating log, my body just numb with cold and shock. I have no idea how long I was in the water. It felt like hours. Eventually, the river widened, and I saw something that made me break down and cry with relief. A small fishing cabin, with a thin ribbon of smoke rising from the chimney. The man in that cabin saved my life. He pulled me out of the water, wrapped me in blankets, and used his satellite phone to call for help. When the state troopers arrived, I told them everything. They launched a search, but they never found him. It's like the forest just swallowed him up. Surviving that taught me that the wilderness has dangers much worse than storms or four-legged predators. It taught me that trusting your gut isn't paranoia. It's a survival tool. It proved how valuable preparation and knowledge are. But it also showed me that the single most important survival skill is the will to live, that raw refusal to be a victim. What would you have done? What survival skills do you think are the most important to have? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Stay safe out there, And always, always be aware of your surroundings. You never know when that might be the only thing standing between you and the darkness.